Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we have episode 131, and we've got a lot to talk about. Not a lot of fights this weekend at all. It was a very tame weekend. You had Zuffa Boxing 3 and a couple of other smaller boxing fights we'll talk about. But we've got a lot of news to get through. And let's just start with the most shocking one of all. Nobody saw this coming. MVP and Netflix today announced that Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano will fight in an MMA fight on Netflix on May 16th in Los Angeles. I don't even know what to think about this. This is crazy. I mean, I believe that Gina Carano has not competed since 2009. Ronda Rousey, something like 2016, I want to say. So it's been over a decade or around a decade for both of these women. This is one of those super fights that had been talked about for a long time. I mean, Ronda Rousey is arguably, in fact, no, she is the biggest name in women's MMA. And Gina Carano is definitely pretty much up there with her. This fight just feels like it's a little bit like kind of random to take place now. We know that Ronda Rousey and Katie Taylor were apparently in talks for a boxing match on Netflix, and that made no sense. And I assume that would have been with MVP, and then they pivoted here to do an MMA fight with her and Gina Carano. This would be MVP's first MMA fight, which I find very interesting, and I wonder, is Jake Paul going to compete in MMA under MVP now? We know that he had an investment in a relationship with the PFL and that is no more. It is because MVP it's taking its own foray into MMA. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Amanda Serrano returning to MMA on the undercard. I have no idea is this an all women's card. I would hope not, because I think MVP can do a really good thing of paying out a lot of these former UFC guys and having people like Anderson Silva and Nate Diaz, who they've already had on their boxing events, compete on this MMA show. I think that would be incredible. But we'll just have to see. I mean, I'm just so shocked that this happened. It came out of nowhere. And again, yeah, it's getting a fair bit of hate. I would say some people are criticizing it, because they both have been retired for a long time, and why can't you just stay retired? But it is just such a wild announcement. I love it. I'm excited. It's the first ever MMA fight on Netflix. Dana White and the UFC are a little bit pissed about this for a few reasons. Most notably, they're not getting the first fight on Netflix. They just signed a new deal with Paramount, and I would assume that Paramount is kind of worried. You have the White House card a month after this. A lot of people are saying you need to have a very big main event for the White House now, because it's going to be hard to top Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano as the biggest event of the year. I don't think that it is. I think the White House is still bigger, even if you don't have John Jones or Conor McGregor headlining. But it definitely is competition now, being on Netflix, and especially because Netflix publishes all of its numbers, for its live events. They're going to see how successful this fight is, and I think the UFC is going to want to have Jones or McGregor headlining the White House card, to try and combat it, especially because it's Jake Paul who's doing this now. So it's a wild thing. I think they had their first press conference in the first week of March. So looking forward to that. Again, looking forward to the undercard. It's so wild to me. I mean, MVP every single month feels like they do a new thing that's unexpected and kind of groundbreaking. And they're really the first major boxing promotion to get into MMA. Besides, I guess if you count Misfits, as they had the Dylan Dennis fight. But I don't know if you can really count that as a major boxing, promotion, because it's not traditional boxing. But yeah, it's wild. It was also reported this week by Mike Coppinger that the Mike Tyson-Floyd Mayweather fight is still going to happen, that exhibition, and it's tentatively scheduled for April 25th in the Congo, which is so random. I kind of like them doing it in Africa, and it's gotten a lot of more talk this week because it seems like it's actually going to happen. Again, I have to say, I don't fully expect it to, especially with Floyd's recent legal disputes, with Showtime and all that. I think that Mike Tyson is definitely down to do it, even though I think that he shouldn't. He's 59. It's like, dude, come on. I don't know. I still don't really see it happening. But look, hey, if they can find a way to make this happen, let's watch it. Why not? I just don't think that it does. Speaking of exhibitions, it also was just announced that Manny Pacquiao is going to have another exhibition. He's going to be fighting former world champion Ruslan Provodnikov April 18th in Las Vegas. That's the same date and city that Boots Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz is being discussed about, if that still happens. Very random. We know that Manny is wanting to stay in boxing. He fought Mario Barrios for the title last year. There was talks of a rematch, talks of a fight with him and Rolly Romero. I do think that he's going to get another title shot soon. I'm a little surprised it's an exhibition and not a pro fight, but that may be more of, Provodnikov not wanting to do a pro fight again. We know that Juan Manuel Marquez and Timothy Bradley were apparently also approached, but they turned it down. It's just so weird. But look, Manny Pacquiao Promotions they're putting together a very strong schedule. Obviously, they have the card next week with Elijah Pierce and Lorenzo Parra. And then they also have this. They today or yesterday, no, I think it was today, they won the purse bid for the Angelo Leo versus Ra'is Aleem fight. Leo's presented by ProBox. They didn't win that purse bid. They present Aleem and they got it, which it's a little bit rare to see the challenger get the purse bid, but fair play to them. That's another world title fight they're going to put on. They also announced that Pedro Tataran will defend his IBF minimum weight championship against Gustavo Perez April 3rd in Temecula, California. So they're putting together a really good schedule for the first half of the year, which is good. It's cool to see not a new promotion, but a new promotion come into the U.S. They haven't really had a U.S. presence, and now they're doing a solid schedule. So, really, really crazy times. Ronda Rousey's fighting Gina Carano on a Jake Paul MMA fight. Mike Tyson's going to fight Floyd Mayweather in Africa. Manny Pacquiao is still fighting at 48. It's just nuts. Now let's talk about the fights we did have this weekend. Zuffa Boxing 3. This may have been my favorite card they've done yet. And while I do think that Zuffa Boxing 2 had the more competitive and overall better fights, with the matchmaking, this one, dude, that main card had 3 fights. All 3 ended in the first half, in the first couple of rounds. And the card was over by 10:30 when it started at 9, which is insane. Main event, F.A. Ajagba, who I actually thought lost the first 2 rounds to Charles Martin. I thought that Martin was doing pretty good. Ajagba wasn't doing a whole lot and was getting caught with shots I wasn't expecting him to. But then third round, hits him with a big shot and drops him. Okay, here's where it's all going to go down. And then he finishes it up in the 4th round. This is how we expected it to go. Charles Martin, I believe, is almost 40. It's time for him to hang him up. F.A. Ajagba is a top 10 heavyweight right now. He's one of the biggest punchers in the division. We all saw this coming. I do think that Martin, I have to give him his credit. He was better in there in the first 2 rounds than I was expecting, but still didn't make it out of 4. F.A. Ajagba says, I'll fight anyone. They all got to come to me. He's by far the best heavyweight in the world on Zuffa Boxing, and I don't know anybody else that they'll sign to really make, competition for him. They'd have to sign somebody else in the top 10, and I don't necessarily see that happen. So I don't know. We'll see what they do with him, but they need to sign more talent to fight him, and that's the problem that they have with a lot of their guys is you've got good fighters, but you need to be signing a lot of new fighters to be able to challenge them. Co-main event, you had Umar Zambekov really have his star-making performance. We've known that this guy's pretty good, but this was his first fight on a big show, and he uppercut, one punch, knocks out Ahmed Albiali, who I believe had only ever lost once before that. Wow, that is a leading contender for KO of the year. It will be on the list at the end of the year. It was unbelievable. Scary knockout. Albiali's leg is just shaking afterwards. I was very, very impressed by that. And, yeah, it really does just feel like Zambekov is kind of on top of the world right now. And I saw that he just started his Twitter account the other day. He's getting a lot more fans. And, dude, that was a nasty, nasty knockout. And this is what I mean. This is where you just realize just the brand, similar to the UFC, of having these guys who aren't super well-known boxers, them fighting on here, they make big performances, they have big moments, and automatically they get a bigger fan base. So he's at light heavyweight. We'll see who else they have in the light heavyweight division. They mentioned Hot Rod Kalajic. Dude, he had a great knockout just a couple weeks ago over Gvozdyk. You have Zambekov versus Kalajic. That is a hell of a fight. I would hope that that's what they're planning next. And then opening up the main card, you had an upset as Abel Mejia got knocked out in the 3rd round with another insane knockout. Now, obviously, he was fighting Jay Brio Pe Benito, who was also undefeated. These guys, neither of them had ever lost, but Mejia was, I believe, a minus 1,000 favorite. He was definitely expected to win, and Pe Benito had his own plans. I thought that he won every round of the fight leading up until then. Dropped Mejia good in the 2nd round, and then the 3rd round came out swinging. And, dude, that was also a great, great knockout. And, look, when you throw young fighters in who aren't as experienced, sometimes this happens. And that's the hard truth about the really good matchmaking early on is that guys are going to get knocked out. But, yeah, well done to Pe Benito. Again, star power just goes way up. Leonardo Ruiz had a really good performance on the prelims, stopping Casey Streeter in the 4th round. I was very impressed by Mark Buke. He started off losing that fight against Antonio Woods and then comes back and beats him. Osvaldo Medina had a decision win. Emiliano Alvarado, 4th round stoppage win, as did Daryl Kuchmanov, also a 4th round stoppage win. So some really good prospects they've got under their belt. You also had over in Japan, Ryosuke Nishida defeat Brian Mercado in an IBF Super Bantamweight final eliminator. I had given Mercado 1 round of the fight, as did all the judges. I gave him the second. But I thought it was a really fun fight to watch. It gets stopped in the 7th with a very brutal cut over the eye of Ryosuke Nishida. The poor guy, I mean, he's just always swelling up around the eyes and getting cuts. But I thought that he looked really good. It was a war for the 7 rounds that lasted. Even though it wasn't close on the cards, it was a really fun fight to watch. Challengers for one, Naoya, the monster, Inoue. We'll see if he gets that fight. I highly doubt it. I assume that once Inoue eventually moves up to featherweight, he'll be in a position to challenge for one of those vacant titles. Maybe he gets a Junto Nakatani rematch. I don't know, but another very good fighter enters the 122-pound division, which we need because there's not a lot of great fighters at 122 right now, besides Inoue and Nakatani. And then top tier also had a show on Sunday, main evented by Thiago Muxonga defeating Asenia Byfield by split decision. One judge gave Byfield the fight 96-93, which I think is ridiculous. The other ones 95-94 and 96-93. I thought that it was very, very one-sided, to be honest. I gave Muxonga almost every round of the fight. I thought that he looked fantastic. So I don't really know what they were smoking that they thought that Byfield won. I mean, literally, if Byfield was 1 point away from winning the fight, I don't get that. But you know what? Muxonga wins a title in just his 3rd professional fight. He's 3-0, and he's already gone a full 10 rounds, so he's a really solid prospect in the UK. Josh Babb wins the English title with a unanimous decision win over Piotr Mirga. Ross Driscoll outpoints Toomey Phillips in a really, really fun fight between two guys. I believe Driscoll was 4-0, Phillips was 5-0 headed in. Driscoll wins the majority of the rounds. Really good performance. And a lot of other fun fights. Taiwo Musuro had the only stoppage of the card, I believe, where he knocked out Grant Dennis in 4 rounds. That was impressive. I enjoyed the top-tier Sunday shows a good bit. This one wasn't the best. There's a lot of mainly one-sided fights on the scorecards and barely any stoppages, but excuse me, that's what you have to expect. I do want to shout out Ali B. Lubanji, who I thought that he gave a really good effort on the prelims, and I actually gave him a draw in that fight against Robert Caswell. He didn't get the decision, which is probably the right call, but I thought that it was a pretty close fight. I enjoyed it. But let's hop back over into some other news in the world of boxing and MMA. And let's start with, we had a press conference last week with Tyson Fury and Arsenbek Makhmudov. The press conference, pretty tame. Fury seems like he's in a good space. That's what everyone's talking about. It's going to be on Netflix, which is sick. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But the most important part of this, and the most important news tip that came out of it, was that Fury says he's not going to have a trainer for this upcoming fight, which is obviously a terrible idea. I think that he's saying that in his training camp, he's not going to have someone like Sugar Hill, not going to have someone like Andy Lee behind him telling him what to do. I would hope that once it actually comes to fight night, he's got someone in his corner. I get it. Once these guys get into the later stages of their careers, they know how to do everything. They've been in every kind of fight. They know what to do. But you still need somebody to help guide you, because you're not necessarily thinking straight when you're taking punches from Arsenbek Makhmudov. Even though Fury's definitely going to beat him, you're taking punches from a huge guy. You're going to feel those. You need someone else to help you. Who's watching from the outside and can give you stuff. So I think he not only needs a trainer on fight night, I definitely think he needs one in his camp as well. And I hope it's not just John Fury, because that's a terrible idea. That's worse than not having a trainer. He got into it with Carl Froch at the press conference. It was a whole disaster. We talked about it last week, but it's been officially announced that Fabio Wardley is going to face Daniel Dubois May 9th at the Co-op Live in Manchester on DAZN pay-per-view and DAZN Ultimate. Fantastic fight. Can't wait for it. Not really much to say, just that holy shit, I cannot wait for that fight. Again, don't love Dubois getting the title shot off a loss, but 2 top 5 guys. Both have 95% knockout ratios as they put on the poster. It's going to be a war. I'm excited. UFC is apparently planning for Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje to headline the UFC White House card, which is, again, really concerning. And I do still think that will matter more to people than Ronda Rousey's Gina Carano. But we were being told for the longest time it's going to be McGregor. Maybe they just don't have that over the line yet, but they do have this fight. I definitely expect it to be on the card. Dana White says that they finished planning the card last week. He didn't say it's done, but they have it all marked down as what they want to do. That it's been match made, but they haven't, they haven't gone through all the negotiations, haven't finalized it. And apparently we're also going to get Islam Makhachev versus Ian Gary at a later date. Saw some people talking about how Ian Gary said if he were to ever fight Islam, he would train in Georgia. He just arrived in Georgia this week, so people think this means he's fighting Islam, and there was a report about it. I like it. I think Ian Gary is the most deserving contender at 170 with Shavkat injured. I think he deserves it more than Michael Morales, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, I do hope that is the plan. So this whole Golden Boy Virgil Ortiz saga continues. They've been granted a temporary restraining order on any Virgil Ortiz third-party negotiations for the Boots Ennis fight. This was, of course, because apparently we now know that Virgil was approached by Matchroom Boxing with a 3-fight deal, which would get him between $12 to $20 million. I think it was another offer was like $16 million plus upside. I don't know. It's a lot of money. And I think that Virgil would have taken that, but Golden Boy is refusing to let him do any third-party negotiations. It's weird. They're having an emergency hearing this week, I believe on Friday, to determine if the fight can still go ahead for April 18th. I think DAZN is trying to force it, and it's very frustrating because Golden Boy's really tried to slow this down. I don't know what it is. I think it's mainly that they were trying to get a lot more money for Virgil, and Matchroom in DAZN, and everyone wasn't really budging. And now they're like, okay, you know what? If you're going to be difficult, we're going to try and do the fight without you. And they don't like that, so they're taking legal action. But it's crazy. This is obviously affecting their negotiations for their new renewal deal with DAZN. Apparently, we're supposed to have Collazo versus Melvin Jerusalem 2. That has now been postponed or put on hold to like June or July as a result of this because they don't have the money in the new deal. Now, it was announced today that Arnold Barboza and Kenneth Sims are going to fight on March 14th in Anaheim. That's a brilliant 140 fight. Both Golden Boy guys coming off of losses, good losses to Teofimo Lopez and Oscar Duarte, respectively. It's a really good fight. I like it a lot. But it was also announced that Collazo will be on that undercard. This is the same day we were hearing he could fight Jerusalem, except he's going to be fighting Jesus Haro instead, who I've never even heard of. So definitely disappointing there. And then Gabriela Fundora will also be in this card. She'll be fighting Viviana Ruiz Corridor. Not sure who she is, but she's just going to be defending her undisputed titles. So it's really cool you're going to get to have Barboza versus Sims and Collazo and Fundora on the undercard. I just wish, again, that it was better matchmaking for Collazo and Fundora. I think they really both need to move up. But if Collazo is going to stay there, at least get to undisputed, and Golden Boy is preventing him from doing so with all this, negotiation BS. So obviously we also saw that Tom Aspinall went through some more eye surgeries last week, and it really does sound like it's worse than it is. Apparently his career is in jeopardy right now. He hasn't been able to even think about fighting since the fight, he said. He hasn't been training at all. He still has issues with his vision. When he tries to shake people's hands, he misses. He's got like a permanent black spot that isn't going away. I mean, I think that a lot of people kind of didn't give him the benefit of the doubt and said he was trying to just find a way out of the fight and didn't believe him, which I think is total BS. And it really does suck because it looks like this eye poke may have completely ruined his career, which is just terrible. And I really, really hope that he's able to get the majority of his vision back and be able to fight again, because it literally this came on at the very start of his title reign. And yeah, that's just so unfortunate for him. So I hope he's okay. I hope that he recovers fully. But I also do think that this is time that the UFC decides, okay, let's make an interim title fight. If we can't do Ox Pereira versus John Jones, have him fight Cyril Gane for the interim belt. That is the best option you have. It was finally announced today that Callum Smith and David Morrell have a deal in place, and they're going to fight April 18th in Liverpool. Really cool that they were able to bring this fight home for Callum Smith. I don't know if it goes his way. It's a great fight. It's a close fight. So we'll have to see which way it goes. But I think it's cool they were able to deliver for him and get that in the UK, Liverpool particularly. But yeah, really, really big fight. And glad that one's been over the line because it's been in negotiations for like 6 months, it feels. There are rumors and reports that the UFC is working on getting Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira in the works for UFC 327 in April in Miami. Of course, that card is less than 2 months away. We still don't have it officially announced. No main event. The other rumor was Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg. I'd be kind of surprised if they do both of those title fights on this card. We'll see if they do. Maybe it's Yuri versus Carlos in like a number one contender fight. I think that Alex is moving up to heavyweight. I think it makes more sense to have that just be for the vacant title. I don't know. We also know that Joshua Van and Manel Kopp were in talks for the co-main event for March 7th. And now Manel Kopp said that's no longer happening because UFC had already promised Tatsuro Taira a title shot. And I do like Tyra getting a title shot, although I think I actually would prefer Van to fight Kopp and then Tyra to fight Horiguchi. This is what it sounds like. It's going to be Van versus Tyra, probably headlining 327. We'll see. I would love if we had 2 title fights on that card, but with the UFC on Paramount these days, that feels very unlikely. It's good if we get 1 legit title fight on a card, as they're saving up everything for the White House. Apparently, Andy Hiraoka has still not been able to enter the U.S. with visa issues. Obviously, he's meant to fight Gary Antoine Russell for his WBA super lightweight title on Saturday. I hope he's able to get through. If not, everyone's saying, well, you got a good fight there with him and Frank Martin. And I agree that if you cannot get Hiraoka, you say apologies to Nahir Albright, pay him some money, and you have Frank Martin challenge Russell for the title. I think that's a great fight as well. Russell Hiraoka is the better fight and one of the best fights on that card, so it would be very disappointing, but it is what it is. I hope that he's able to still get through, because if not, this would be, the 3rd Ring Magazine card in a row to lose a world title fight during fight week. It'd be very unfortunate. The Fundora vs. Thurman undercard has been announced. Frank Sanchez, Richard Torres is going to be co-main event. We expected that. We knew that. IBF heavyweight title eliminator. Yoeli Hernandez back against Terrell Gaucher. Hope he gets his title shot soon, because he's going to beat Gaucher, no problem. And then Elijah Garcia versus Kevin Newman, which is an okay fight. To be honest, for a PBC pay-per-view with how good they've been recently, this is pretty disappointing. I kind of expected Sanchez-Torres would be a fight that's like opening up the card, or maybe second. I didn't think it'd be co-main event. I'm okay with Yoeli being on the pay-per-view, but other than that, yeah, it's not a great pay-per-view. I would have liked to have seen another title fight on it or something. David Benavidez says he will return to 175 after the Zurdo fight, which is good because I think that he got lots more to do with that weight class, and that he wants to fight both Bivol and Beterbiev. And then the WBO also confirms that they're getting rid of the interim title. They're getting rid of the interim title plans that they have with the fight in Germany, which I'm a little bit confused about. They obviously had ordered that. That fight's agreed. It's happening in a couple weeks. And I tweeted about that, and the president, Gustavo Oliveira, responded to me, which is kind of crazy. And he was like, we'll make an announcement soon regarding this. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. Maybe that'll just be like a final eliminator now. I don't know. But I like it because we don't need to have extra interim titles when they're unnecessary. I think the WBO is one of the most fair sanctioning bodies, maybe the most fair. And so I like them being like, no, we're not going to have it when Zurdo is defending his title against Benavidez very soon, and then he'll fight the mandatory after that. Apparently, Armando Resendiz, Jaime Munguia was being planned for that card. It will no longer be happening, as Munguia was apparently demanding more money, and that fight is now off, which sucks. That was a great all-Mexican war. Resendiz is apparently still being planned to be on the card, and Jamal Charlo is rumored that he could now be the opponent, and I kind of like that. I wouldn't hate it. I think Charlo is still one of the top guys in that weight class, top 10, 15 maybe, and I wouldn't hate it if he got to fight Resendiz for that title. They're saying it could be announced as early as this week, which makes me think that Ring Magazine is planning to announce Benavidez versus Zurdo this week. So we'll see if that is still the plan. I would hope that's the plan. That'd be pretty sick if they announced it just days before Barrios versus Garcia, but we'll see. We shall see. We got a few more news things, so we'll try and go through them quickly. There was some shit talk this week between Xander Zayas and Devin Haney, which was a little bit surprising. Devin Haney seems like he's already talking about a jump up to 154. He's got to slow his roll. He just got to 147. He's got plenty of fights there. But look, Xander Zayas is going to be at 154 for a minute probably before he goes up to middleweight inevitably. I wouldn't hate to see that fight one day. 2 undefeated guys, both really, really good with big futures. But, I don't think there's any reason to rush in. I did think it was funny how Bill Haney, of course, is doing the shit talk and calling Xander food for them. Anyways, Vidal Riley versus Mateusz Masternak has been announced for the EBU European Championship on April 4th as co-main event to Chisora versus Wilder. We knew that, but really cool that they're getting him a big fight. And finally, Vidal Riley gets to come back. He's been so inactive over the last year or two. I hope that changes under MF Pro, but we'll have to see if it does. Matchroom also announced another card for April 3rd. Pat Brown is back. He's going to be fighting Vasil Ducar in a step-up. Also on the card, you're going to have William Carla fight Jermaine Osborne-Edwards as an eliminator for the English 154 title. And then Joe Howarth versus, I believe, is Josh Blankiron. Is that right? He's going to be fighting, who just fought on the on their last card in the UK. But anyways, they're going to be fighting in an English lightweight title eliminator. Howard just challenged Fisioli for that. And then you're also going to have Alfie Middlemiss on the card. Jordan Thompson is returning, the debut for Matchroom, at least, for the Croft twins, who they just signed. It's definitely like a next-gen kind of card, but I actually don't mind it. I think that some of these fights are pretty good, and we'll see. It's an interesting show, but I'm excited for it. Yeah, I'm okay with the smaller UK shows. They're pretty fun. I like Pat Brown a lot, so excited to see him back in the ring. There's rumors that UFC is going to be returning to Ottawa, Canada on April 18th. Seems like it's happening. And Gilbert Burns versus Michael Malott was reported, which I actually quite like that fight. I just hope it's not the main event, which I'm a little bit worried it is. I think that's a solid co-main event or main card fight for the Canada card. But, yeah, I would hope it's not the main event of the fight. But we shall see. We shall see. Gilbert Burns, they're just trying to put the guy in a losing streak forever. Wildly, Curtis Blades versus Josh Hokett is apparently set for UFC 327. I could be wrong, but isn't Curtis Blades ranked in like the top 5? And look, we know heavyweight has a problem. There's no exciting fighters, and it's very hard to watch. And Josh Hokett promises to be a much more exciting prospect in the division. I'm not entirely surprised they're going to, trying to, rush him a little bit into getting to a ranked fight. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him in with someone who's ranked top like number 15 or 14 later this year, but I was not expecting them to give him like a top 5 fight. It's just so out of nowhere. It really, really weird. I don't hate it. I think it'll be a lot of fun, but just out of nowhere that they would give him such a big fight so quick. Apparently, Lucas Body has rejected the Albert Bell fight. He was offered. It was an IBF title eliminator. He's apparently going to go for the WBA fight, a WBA title with Floyd Schofield instead, and we know that was apparently being planned for April 11th on DAZN, but that's now on hold with the Golden Boy and Virgil Ortiz dispute, preventing the deal from being renewed. A lot of fighters are missing out on opportunities because I hope they can get it figured out, because Schofield Body's a pretty good fight, and it's a world title that, Golden Boy could promote an event around. Apparently, though, Andy Cruz has been offered that title eliminator. Obviously, he was mandatory for Raymond Murtaya, lost that. He's still going to be very highly ranked. And him and Albert Bell is a good fight, and by the time that he wins it, Murtaya may have moved up at that point to 140. He may have fought Shakur and lost. So who knows? But I wouldn't be mad if Andy Cruz took that eliminator against Albert Bell next. Speaking of IBF final eliminators, Brandon Adams Keyman Ajarko has been announced for April 11th in Las Vegas. It's not on a big promotion. He's like DMG. But that's a good fight. That's a really, really solid fight for super welterweight. The winner is going to be mandatory for Josh Kelly. So looking forward to that. It was also reported that Mark Mixayo was signing with Zuffa Boxing. Again, another guy who's been a little bit on the outs recently in boxing. Hasn't been able to get any big fights. Not with the big promoter. Makes perfect sense that he would sign with Zuffa. He's got a lot of potential there. And I believe he's at a lightweight. You match him up with someone like, Jose Valenzuela, and you got a good fight. So, yeah, I like that. There's rumors that Kona Walker, Echo Esserman are in talks for a fight in Wolverhampton. I don't know if that's a Matchroom show or Queensberry, probably Matchroom, but Kona Walker deserves a big step up in competition. We've said for the longest time that him and Echo Esserman is the fantastic best fight to make. With Esserman losing to Catterall, he still gets a big fight against Kona Walker. I don't know who'd be favored in that, but it would just be 12 rounds of war if it lasted that long. I love that fight. I've been wanting to see that one in particular for the longest time, so hope that's true. Some other boxing shows that were announced. Apparently, Zuffa is going to have ZO5 on April 5th, which is Easter Sunday, and ZO6 on May 10th, which is Mother's Day. So don't love them going back-to-back holidays. It seems like they did the first show on a Friday. Now it's all Sundays, it looks like, which is whatever. I would appreciate if they threw in some Fridays here and there, but I also kind of like Sunday is Zuffa. Back-to-back holidays is a little bit odd. And then we also got the announcement from Tasman Fighters that Jason Maloney and Ben Mahoney are going to have a double-header in Brisbane on Stan Sport, not DAZN. So even without Jaya they're still going to keep doing shows, which I think is cool, and they're going to continue on with Stan Sport, who they did the last Jaya fight on. And the production of that card was pretty good. I just hope it's available in the U.S. And then lastly, Ryan Garner has been announced to be returning on March 14th on Queensberry's very big and stacked show in Dublin. I have to say, a little bit surprised, as it looks like he's been announced without an opponent just a few weeks out. Makes me think he's going to be fighting in like an 8-rounder against a journeyman, which I hate. They're just trying to keep him active because they don't have any big fights for him, which doesn't make sense. He's like super highly ranked. And of course, the word on the street and the rumor is now that the winner of Kakache Dickens, they're trying to set up Ryan Garner for. He'll probably be on the main card, and then they can say, hey, you want to get the winner? And look, I mean, they almost made Kakache versus Garner a few years ago, and then that fight got canceled, but I would be more than happy if Queensberry gave the winner or gave Ryan Garner a title shot against the winner of that fight. I think he's a top 15 super featherweight, no doubt. So I'm cool with that. But that's all I've got for today's episode. Thank y'all so much for listening. I'll do another one on Friday probably, where we preview a big weekend in combat sports. You've got Mario Barrios, Ryan Garcia, Sean Strickland versus Fluffy Hernandez in Houston. Clarissa Shields is back rematching French on Cruz Dezern. And, of course, Lee Wood, Josh Warrington, too. The Bad Blood rematch. Thank you all so much for listening. Peace out. Have a good week.